But my main personal issue with quarters or trimesters would be that I have to take 3 sets of finals every year instead
Oh
of
man.
two, and their associated midterms. That just sounds especially bad, and
I
I
can't do
don't.
two midterms. There's no way. Yeah, that's even more overhead, right?
Yeah, I
You
don't
have
think
to
you have
go the
two
whole day.
midterms, but you have like three of these, especially if you're taking like classes like uh what I was trying to say is like classic classes where the finals are huge weights, right?
Hmm.
I don't know what are these like math classes. I don't know if it's math classes, but there's like typically classes where the exams are huge parts of the grade. I don't think it's very relevant with us two being CS students. Usually the exams are a significant portion of the grade. Maybe they are the majority, but it's not like one of them being 50%, one exam being 50%. And I'm
Hmm.
pretty sure that is common with other kinds of classes where,
Is that really true? 50%? Wait.
well, I know that I've, I forgot where I heard this from, whether it was like from my sister or other college people, but I know there were exams in there were definitely courses where like homework and stuff is not factored into the final grade, and the only thing factored into the final grade is basically like one midterm and one final,
Yeah, it really
and
sucks.
that's your whole grade. And if you fuck up on those, well, uh, that's not good.
Do you think that those are conducive to learning? Or do you think that all, or where on the spectrum do you lie on homeworks and exams
Okay, so
being conducive to learning?
like both kinds have their advantages and disadvantages, and I would say both of them can be exploited in I think what you were trying to allude at, where for exams, like this model where it's only the midterm and the final, this means that you are basically solely focused on cramming for those two exams.
Hmm.
Maybe not cramming, like maybe you could have good study habits, but you could just, if you were that kind of person, not do anything throughout the whole semester and only study like the few days before each of those
Right.
tests and target because those are the only two factors into your grade, right? So that is one downside that I see. And another downside, of course, is that you have very few opportunities for mess ups. Like you only have two chances to influence your grade, and even if you fail at one of them, well, that's already 50% of your grade messed up. So it gives you very little wiggle room to be a human and make mistakes.
Right,
With
right.
the homeworks, it makes it much more easier for people to also game the system, but in like a different way, where first of all, especially when you were taking exams in person, it's it is definitely harder, I would say, I think, to cheat on those where you like are trying to actively cheat on the exam compared to the forms of cheating available or collaboration with homeworks. Like the bar is just not as high, right? Because you don't have
Mhm.
people actively looking at you, moderating you. I mean, there are tools against it also with homework, but it's a different kind, and oftentimes you could probably get away with stuff. And with homeworks also, I I'm not sure what the other point I was trying to get with is, but I feel like with exams, having the pressure, right, where you're in a time setting, I actually don't know how I completely feel about that. Like, is that actually necessary having a timed exam? Like, do you think, suppose you have like a take home exam or okay, actually, before I ask that, let me first describe one of my own personal experiences. I did take a class last semester where they had no exams. It had no final, no midterm. And the whole class, I remember the syllabus, 70% of the grade is homeworks. And then there's like 27% being these take-home quiz things, which are basically just like written homeworks that you do every week. And then 3% was participation, which I have no idea how I got those 3% because second half I just stopped going to class. But that's unrelated. But with that 70% homework, the benefits are it is infinitely less stressful for students because homeworks are just you are able to plan out how you're going to approach this and manage your time. While for exams, timed exams, you have 80 minutes and you got to do all your stuff within that 80 minutes. And you feel stressed because there's always like a timer ticking away. And for homeworks, there's a timer ticking away, but it's in the scale of days, not like minutes.
Right. You have more control.
You have more control. But the point I was trying to get with is that kind of stuff is less stressful, certainly. Is it better for learning? I don't know if it's worse for learning, but I certainly don't think it was better for learning because I've already forgotten everything.
True.
Like,
yeah, it's
nearly everything in that class. I still remember most of the core content from like the first few weeks because we used it so often in the other assignments, but nearly everything else I've already forgotten. So, of course, this could be just me not being a great example, but what I can say is there are other classes where I like feel more stressed. I probably like am not even as actually, I don't know if interest is a big factor, but I'm certainly more stressed in those other classes, and I learn more from them. And what I want a key distinction is also, oftentimes, stuff you learn from previous classes, you'll really remember them if you use them in later classes, right? And I feel like some of these classes where I really didn't, I don't think, use it a lot in future classes so far, I still think like it's been more impactful and more resilient in my memory than this one class where it was the very lenient homework-based grading policy.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about exams is that they force you to remember everything. You have to commit it to memory for at least a day, if you're cramming. And so that, like, is a exercise in recollection. Just on the fly, can you pull something out of your memory, synthesize it with other things, and then put it on the paper? And with homeworks, that's not necessary because you can just go through the notes. It's right there in front of you. You just put it on the page. Like, the sort of ingredients for solving the problem are not in your head. They're in front of you. And you don't need to internalize them in order to solve it. And so I guess the value of exams is that you're forced to keep that working set in your head. Especially if it's timed, because it's much faster to have everything in your head than it is to have it, like if it's open note, like on paper or whatever. I guess there's a balance.
I guess this is a very throwaway comment, but your head and your brain is like the SRAM, and the paper is the disk.
That's exactly how I was thinking about it. That is exactly how I was thinking of it.
Yeah.
Because later on in life, when you're trying to recall this stuff, I think you're much better served with having had to recall this from memory before than if you had not had that experience. Because later in life, you're going to be looking this up, right? If you need it, right, for your job, or who knows why you might need to remember George Cantor's diagonalization argument. Okay, you're gonna like Google this, and you're gonna read through it, and then you're just gonna hopefully you just remember, and then oh, that's how you do it, and then you're good.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great point because even the stuff that I did forget, which honestly, even for those classes where there were exams and stuff, I still, I think, forgot most of the stuff if it wasn't like repeatedly used, right? But one thing I do know is if the stuff did come up later and I had forgotten it, right? Relearning it, reassociating myself with that knowledge was very quick. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I just had to look at one example and I'm like, "Oh, I get what this is, what this actually means." And
Right, because if you've
remember,
done it before, you can do it again.
right.
Um, Whereas if you have never had that experience and you have never needed to recall from memory, say for an exam, then it becomes much harder because you're basically going to repeat what you did for the homework, which is have everything in front of you and then very slowly construct a solution from all those bits and pieces um, that you may find in a textbook or online.
hmm
So, you know,
So these exams certainly you think have like a place in being part of how these courses are all structured.
yeah, although I think they cause undue stress.
Okay.
Um, I
So
feel like,
does like one outweigh the other?
I don't know. I mean, but of course, prefer to take a class that is 70% homework, has no exams, no final,
hmm
because, you know, it's free, so to speak.